I'm your host, Cory and happy July, happy Cancer season. And speaking of Cancer season, the first water sign in the zodiac, what a weirdly wet June that was here in New York. Like every single day, just about. And even today, so wet, so humid. I think New York is turning into a tropical rainforest climate. And some of you know this, but growing up, I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, where my family's from. And this past month, with all the wetness and vegetation, I'm having so many sensory flashbacks to my childhood and to Hawaii. And I've been thinking and talking a lot about the nostalgic body of Cancer season. And this has been so visceral for me. It's a it's a different type of memory, not just recollection, but it feels more like an awakening of things stored in my body, but they're being awakened by experiences that I'm having now, almost as if there's some collision of past and present in an effort to integrate. And by the way, I've been on this nostalgic body kick based on a rereading of Marshall McLuhan, the philosopher and media theorist. So if that's interesting to you, I think he even like coined the term nostalgic body. If that's interesting to you, you should check him out. Um, his most popular work is The Medium is the Message. It's really brilliant. And also, because of the pervasive rain we've been having, tonight's solstice event at Opus 40 has been canceled. We tried a couple of times. We can't beat the rain. So we're going to have to wait till the autumnal equinox and we'll try it then. And hopefully, we won't get rained out. Um, so we have a fairly quiet week of astrology ahead, nowhere near the erratic variety of movement we had last week. But this week's two big events are powerful. And because there's not as much astrological noise, we'll really be able to focus in on them. One of the big events is tomorrow's full moon in Capricorn. This means we'll be hearing from astrologer Mandee Sheeler today with her moon report. And we'll be hearing from you as well as we answer some of your questions on the air. And if you would like to have a question answered on the air during our full moon shows, you can email us at thecosmicdispatch@gmail.com and you can stay up to date with all our content on Instagram. And please subscribe to the Cosmic Dispatch on YouTube if you're a visual person or you like to follow along with a transcript or closed captioning. And before we move on to our full moon report questions and this week's astro weather, let's get a bird's eye view of the month ahead. Um, I'm going to share my monthly forecast for July from Chronogram magazine. You can read this and your horoscopes for the month online at chronogram.com or pick up a copy at your favorite Hudson Valley bookstore or shop. So, July's a big month. And in Chronogram, I only have 300 words to describe it. So I suggest tuning into the Cosmic Dispatch for lots more detail. But here is the big picture. So this little piece is called Solar Flares and Changes of Heart. July starts with a practical full moon in Capricorn on the 3rd. That's tomorrow. And Mars's ingress into task oriented Virgo on the 10th. It might look like we're in for a work filled, rule following month, but that's where the industriousness ends. The second half of the month has us flying by the seat of our pants and following our passions. Two major astrological events will have us honing our abilities to handle hot emotions and our desire for self expression. The north node of the moon enters the fiery sign of Aries on July 17th. This means that for the next 18 months, we will experience eclipses on the Aries Libra axis. Eclipses are events that accelerate change and fast track advancement. We're shifting our individual and collective focus to themes of independence within relationships. And I mean, when I talk about independence within relationships, I'm not just talking about um, intimate one to one relationships. I'm including our relationships of that have to do with our individuality mixed in with the collective, groups, organizations, families, etc. The moon's north node is where the volume gets turned up. And in Aries, that means an increase in impulsiveness, assertiveness, and instinct. We only experience eclipses about 4 times a year, but nodal activity is always humming in the background. And during this time, our emotions will be triggered by the interplay of Mars and Venus. And for those of you who are astrologers or you do follow astrology, you'll be like, yeah, but, that's what we were dealing with, during this past eclipse cycle when the nodes were in Taurus and Scorpio. That's a interplay between Mars and Venus as well. And so that's going to continue, only now the Mars Venus expression is going to be through Aries and Libra, fire and air instead of earth and water. And the second major event of July is Venus's station retrograde in Leo on the 22nd. And this is also the same day that the sun enters Leo. Venus typically spends about 3 weeks in each sign, but due to its retrograde, it will spend roughly 4 months in Leo. This means 4 months of a more extroverted expression of Venus, more heat, more drama, more passion, fierce pride, and pageantry. When any planet goes through its retrograde phase, it goes through a deep dive of what that planet and sign represents in your chart. Venus and Leo symbolize matters of the heart. During Venus's station, our hearts stop and then they prepare their journeys into the past and below the surface. And since I've promised more attention to Cancer this week, I will share Cancer Rising's horoscope for the month. And here it is. After a stern reminder about the realities of love at the top of the month, and that would be, I'm referring to tomorrow's full moon in Capricorn, you're ready to bring different expectations to the table. Perhaps the biggest lesson you're learning is that it takes a complex palette of social connections to make us feel secure enough to form the more intimate bonds that we want to have with people. Most one-to-one relationships can't survive the pressure of being one partner's everything. That kind of pressure actually makes relationships less stable and less likely to survive. And by enjoying the support and resources of more social ties, you are less tempted to extract all your needs from one person. So that is specific to Cancer risings, but it's something for all of us to keep in mind this season, as Cancer energy can be a little clannish, as in only wanting to stick with whoever it considers my people or my person, which isn't bad. We all have an inner circle. But when we exclude people for not having the same bloodline, values, or lineage or beliefs as us, we actually hurt our own chances for growth. And we exhaust the resources, things like time, energy, attention, support. Um, we exhaust those resources from our inner circle, or maybe even one person. And I believe this is one of Cancer's growth edges, finding deeper reservoirs of safety in the self, or even other sources of safety by casting a wider net. And then by doing that, they don't have to overly rely on what's familiar for safety. I mean, I think all of us might be tempted to do this to some degree. I know I am. It's like I really like the people that I like, and I tend to maybe cherry pick. Oh, this is the best one, or this is my favorite one. But I have to say that over the years, as I intentionally loosen up on that a little bit and have some people in my life that maybe I don't have a lot in common with, or I don't agree with them on everything, or I have some judgmental thing going on. But if there's like one or two things about that person or relationship that I value, then I focus on that. And just because that person isn't, 100% meeting all of these needs that I think I have, that doesn't exclude them from having value in my life. And that's actually worked out for the better for me. Um, it's helped me grow, and it's just helped me have a more robust support system. So something to think about during Cancer season, and maybe anytime. Um, So let's now move on to the astro weather for the week. So the big news of the week perfects today, but really introduces a story that stays with us until October, and that's Venus's square to Uranus. It perfects today, and also due to retrogrades, they align again in August and one last time at the end of September. Venus is in the sign of Leo and Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. When these two get together, we get the unexpected in regards to our relationships and social life. We get sudden departures, sudden hookups, sudden shakeups. If Uranus is the great pattern breaker, we're looking at disruptions in the patterns of what we usually find attractive or pleasing. We may now be in search of something more daring or incongruent, or things that deviate from the status quo. Even though this is a square aspect, um, I I have a good feeling about this. Square aspects usually symbolize conflict and frustration, but I have a feeling this particular square will work out for a lot of people. I think it's pretty exciting. Um, Uranus is in Taurus, which is the home of Venus. And Venus is the planet that's involved in this square. So there's some reception and some grace. I think this 3 month story of Uranus square Venus is going to help us get radical about our relationships. It's going to help us get rid of some old relational habits that aren't allowing us to feel the fire and passion of intimate connection. Remember, Venus is in Leo right now. That's a fire sign. Venus wants our relationships, and this includes friendships and partnerships, things of the more platonic or business oriented realm, Venus wants even those partnerships to have a little romance coursing through it. And romance does not always mean sexual. We can have like some of the most like beautiful romantic times with our friends and love and value them just as deeply as we would a more traditional romantic or sexual relationship. Um, we can even have this relationship like with our children. Just I'm sure there are parents out there who will know what I'm talking about when I say this. It's sometimes you're watching your kid do something, they're playing or they're working on something, and you're just watching them and you marvel at that that young person's presence. We can also do this with our friends, our colleagues, and really allow ourselves to fall in love a little bit with with who they are, especially when they're purposefully sharing it. So that's a little bit about what I think Venus and Leo wants to do. um yeah, Uranus in a square to Venus wants also to remove what's become a little too comfortable. It wants to take away some of the things that we've taken for granted, and even remove what's stale. And again, find the spark and the edge of discovery in our social lives. Now, the downside of this might be things like trying too hard to be different or wanting things to be different for different sake. There could also be an all style, no substance thing going on here, or a flagrant breaking of agreements without concern or respect for others, just because you're bored or you just got to get out of this, whatever, this is. But that's not honorable. You can be wild and still respect other people. But if we're responding to our authentic new desires, those that are emerging from ourselves, and maintain the wherewithal to respect those that we are in some kind of relationship or agreement with, this could be a revelatory time, exciting and renewing for relationships and all forms of artistic expression. So, to all my artist friends out there, it's time to experiment. Even those of you who don't think you're artists, I'm here to tell you that you are. We all are. For instance, it's completely creative and artistic to go ahead and try that experimental recipe, the one with all the weird ingredients, or paint your walls electric lime or whatever, you know. You can paint a whole mural on your walls. And for that matter, you can dye your hair the same color as your walls. I'm just throwing out, some random suggestions. But it's a time when everything we touch can be infused with our own distinct personal brand or flavor. It's a good time for that. And because it's Venus Uranus, it's time to do something different. And then tomorrow we have the full moon in Capricorn. The moon just entered Capricorn today at 1:21 p.m. Eastern. And what a way to start the week. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, Mandee Sheeler will join us with the full moon report. You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and with me today via Zoom is astrologer Mandee Sheeler with this month's full moon report. How's it going, Mandee?
Hi, Cory. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Yeah,
Good,
yeah.
good.
So, what's going on?
Yeah, should we talk about this full moon that perfects tomorrow?
You have the floor, Mandee. You're
All
the
right.
full moon full moon queen here. What's
Let's
yeah.
let's get into it then. So, as you said, tomorrow, Monday, July 3rd, we have a full moon in Capricorn. It peaks early in the morning, early to me anyway. It's 6:38 Central, 7:38 Eastern time. So I want to kind of set this up a little bit. If we remember back on June 21st, the sun moved into Cancer, which marks the longest day of the year, or the summer solstice. At that moment, our days began growing shorter and shorter. This moment also signifies that we are halfway through the calendar year. If reading or hearing that created some sort of visceral reaction in you, that sense of a cool tempered brush with reality is kind of the broader theme for this lunation. So, what is a full moon and what's it got to do with us? Full moons, by their very nature, are tense aspects. Let me remind you that tense isn't always synonymous with bad. Sometimes tension is the only thing that can move us or get our attention. Tension and pressure help bring things into our awareness, things from some deeper place within us. It's not always comfortable, but this is where growth happens. It's where wisdom is gained. During a full moon, the sun is exactly opposite of the full moon. In astrology, the sun represents our individual vitality and livelihood, and the moon represents all things we find comfort in, how we nurture ourselves, and how we nourish ourselves. Each month, these two energies illuminate a spectrum within us and become aware of each other. This is a highly erratic time, a highly energetic time, a time when something comes to light, gets released, or gains recognition. It can be an erratic time, but it's mostly just energetic. This month, we will experience some sort of reminder that time has passed and will continue to do so. What's in focus for us right now is how it makes us feel and where we feel responsible or not responsible enough for where we are at this point in the story. From here, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Cancer-Capricorn spectrum. For this month's lunation, we have the sun transiting the sign of Cancer and the moon transiting Capricorn. Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign, and it is a Saturn-ruled sign. The Saturnian archetype is often viewed as patriarchal or paternal. Saturn is our planetary timekeeper, our supreme elder. Saturn's gift is the wisdom we gain through the experience of time. It's the responsibilities we must manage and the tasks we need to do in order to get to where we want to be. Cancer, the other side of the spectrum, is the cardinal water sign, which is ruled by the moon. It's our home base. It's what's comfortable and what makes us feel safe. It's where we turn to after a long, hard day of work, and it's the home that we carry with us through the journey of time. The Cancerian archetype is symbolic of home and our families in the physical sense, as well as the culture of what home feels like to us. It's our soft underbelly or the parts of us that we feel we need to protect with some sort of tough outer shell. This energy is a little more tender and squishy than the other side of the spectrum, Capricorn being the Saturn ruled sign that it is. So, a little bit more about this particular lunation. It's like something's been in the works, something that we've been working towards. It's as if we've been chiseling away at something over a stretch of time. This full moon is giving us an invitation to reflect back on just how far we've come. Sure, we may not still be quite where we want to be, and that's okay. But this is a time for course correcting to get to where it is that we're trying to go. Saturn always rewards hard work very handsomely. Saturn lessons are gifts that last a lifetime. It's things we can carry with us all throughout life. We're being encouraged to recognize areas where we have not been responsible or not been as responsible as we could have been. With that same lens, we should also look back and feel a sense of accomplishment or pride for where we are now. It's time to honor our hard work and the hurdles we've overcome. It's also time to think about where you may be overly responsible or too much of an authoritarian presence in your life and let go a little bit. Some of us have been so dedicated to our goals or fulfilling some role in some system or structure that we might have forgotten to nurture and care for our own needs during that process. Check in and make sure you still know who you are, what you like, what nourishes you, and if you're working towards your own goals or someone else's. Consider how the work you do contributes to the culture of your home. Maybe you've taken on too much and have nothing left at the end of the day. If that's you, course correct. The full moon is also in relationship with other planets. The moon is opposite Mercury, which is also in Cancer. Mercury is also forming a square with wounded healer Chiron. Mercury is the planet that symbolizes thought, communication, intellect, and memory. When Mercury opposes the moon, we're able to think more clearly about how things around us make us feel. We are able to formulate new ideas and thoughts around ways we are caring for ourselves and for our family. Considering the signs involved in this configuration, I'm expecting elevated tension between appearing overly sensitive or weepy or coming across as insensitive, cold, or bitter. I've been feeling both of those at any given moment, waffling between the two. A lot of us will find that we're sitting somewhere in the middle, and some of us, yeah, will just feel like we're caught in the middle. Due to the fast moving nature of the planets involved, wherever you're feeling, wherever you're sitting on the spectrum, I don't think it's going to last too long and it'll go out just as quick as it came in. The moon in Capricorn is also forming harmonious aspects to Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Taurus, so there's some sort of abundance or recognition up for grabs. Perhaps you receive word of a pay raise or a project you've been molding finally gets some traction and notice. As I said earlier, this may not be the final resting place or the finish line, but there's reason for pause, for celebration, and well-earned recognition. This full moon is happening very close to the 4th of July here in the US, which I don't know if you can hear, but there are fireworks going on outside right now. I think this further punctuates the scope of emotions we're dabbling in under the influence of this lunation. At the risk of sounding divisive, I feel like on a collective level, our emotions are going to range from this deeply felt sense of pride and desire to preserve the past and honor tradition. I'm getting at patriotism here. Or this feeling of tidal waves of sadness about who and how the structures of our country have supported and who in the past and what that means moving forward. From here, Cory, I have a personal story or some prompts that I can go into. What do you think?
Whatever you feel like expressing, Mandee.
I've got so much going through my head. We've talked a little bit about this. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the prompts that I came up with, and then maybe we'll touch on that story. So I've come up with some cosmically inspired prompts. These are designed for busy lifestyles in mind. So I'm not trying to pressure anybody to go over the top if you don't have it in you this week, but I would like to offer just a couple little blips of things that you can do to kind of channel some of this energy that we're working through. So one of the things that I've done recently this weekend is thought back to the beginning of the year and the goals and I don't do resolutions, but the resolutions that I set out to accomplish for this year. And I'm just kind of checking in with what my goals were, where I'm at, and then doing a little bit of that course correcting that I mentioned earlier. Something else I've been doing is listening to music from like my angsty teen years. And I've been really either like angsty and kind of bitter or super sad and emo, and just letting the music work through me and let me work through my emotions in that way. And then something else I've done, and this will be the last one that I share, is I've kind of gone back, and this kind of touches on the first one that I shared, but I've gone back through my old notes and planners and journals and scrapbooks. I'm just revisiting my history and things I've done, where I've wanted to be, and comparing where I'm at. And yeah, just kind of checking in on some of the bigger picture and bigger frame goals that I have for myself in my life, and doing a little course correcting where I need to. Yeah, that's all for my prompts. I do have this, it is published on the St. Louisan, so you can go to the stlouisan.com, and I'll make sure all of this is linked in the show notes as well.
Thank you, Mandee. That was really excellent and
Yeah.
very thorough. Um, yeah, the moon doesn't love being in Capricorn. It's in its detriment in Capricorn. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no value, right, to
Yeah.
a Capricorn moon and a Capricorn full moon. I feel like the benefit of a Capricorn full moon is you get kind of it's a hard reality check, but it's important to know where we are. You don't get a lot of the sugar coating you would get maybe with a that you would with like a Pisces moon or a Taurus moon. It's just kind of like, oh damn, that's okay.
We're
You
doing
get
that.
it's a report card. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're gonna like what your grade is, and sometimes you're gonna be disappointed. But at least it's that, at least I know where I stand, kind of a situation. And you mentioned, this is such a weird. I don't even know if weird's the right word. I don't even know what word to use for the situation that's going on, like in the world right now and in America. I suppose it's not even weird. But we recently, like last week, we had some major Supreme Court decisions, and yeah, and you bring up Cancer Capricorn and our history. Um, America is such a Cancer Capricorn creature. You think of like Cancer, I think of like, literally homeland security. Like that
Absolutely.
is Cancer to, the utmost. And then Capricorn, you know, infrastructure, um,
The rules.
government, the rules, the laws, government systems. Um, Yeah, and I don't think we're anywhere near done with the tumult, and there's a lot more report cards coming out
Yeah.
that I think we need to brace ourselves for. A lot's changing, and it's not just. I also want to something I've been thinking about, especially last week with all of the events, that are
Yeah.
happening. I knew this Capricorn moon was coming up, and I was trying to like get a beat on, okay, astrologically, what's going on. And the big thing that I kept being drawn to was Pluto. Right now, Pluto is in Capricorn, and we've talked some about that. That is a long, ongoing process of infrastructure breakdown and collapse, basically. And at the moment, Pluto is square the moon's nodes, and whenever we have a planet squaring the moon's nodes, that is a major time of reckoning, of like many forks in the road. It's kind of like, positioning every situation or everything that's going on and putting it at this fork in the road and saying, okay, which way are you going to go? And then being like, I don't know. And maybe it's not even just two forks because of the nature of what's going on in the world and the country right now. It's like
Yeah.
this multi-pronged um it's like, oh, which out of these like 30 different directions can do I travel? Which road do I go down? Because we're not just polarized as a country. It's like, oh, are you thinking this way or are you thinking this way? It's our realities are so fragmented. And we're the pressure, I think, is just increasing for, people to pick one of these many roads to go down. And yeah, we're just so ununified. So yeah, this is going to be a hot summer in like many, many ways. Um, yeah, because Pluto's going to stay in Capricorn for the rest of 2023, and so we're going to be dealing with these things a lot more. But yeah, thanks. And we just had a Kazimi yesterday that
Yeah.
is opposing this full moon, and I have a feeling, yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of the events that went down last week um, were like crystallized in our mind with the Kazimi, and
Yeah.
then with the Capricorn full moon, it feels like, and here's the final word, and like you just said, not final final, but I'm gonna drop something definite here,
Mhm. Yeah.
here's a milestone, or here's a result.
Monumental. It's
Yeah.
mhm.
um yeah, results, final words, is what we can look at with over the next few days with the Capricorn full moon. I think that was really, really well done, Mandee. I appreciate that. I appreciate you.
Thanks.
and
Usual.
and we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to answer some of your Capricornian, cancerish questions. You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and with me via Zoom today is astrologer Mandee Sheeler, aka the keeper of the questions. So just when y'all ask your questions via email, um, Mandee is the one who gets them and picks out really good ones that will fit within the context of the show and current transits. So yeah, Mandee, what do you have for us today?
So the first question is, what does Saturn represent in our natal charts? I have Saturn in Capricorn. I know Saturn is, quote, at home in Capricorn, but I don't know what this means.
Okay, that's a big one. All of these, you know, what does this planet mean? What does this sign mean? They're huge. These are huge questions, because they're archetypes. And if you're not familiar with archetypes or symbolism, archetypes are like these containers that hold many, many impressions and stories, um, multitudes of them actually, and they can express in many different ways. And I'm going to try to hit the big ones
Big
here.
one.
So if we can all get our natal charts on the web for free. And if you're looking at your chart and you see that little Saturn symbol, and you see it's in a sign and it's in a house and it makes connections to planets, um these all these things are googleable. um if you just kind of want to get an idea, it's always best, though, I think, to either study, read, or have a consultation. But yeah, if you want to pull out your charts right now, well, I just say a couple things about Saturn, which is the ruler of um Capricorn in this full moon. It represents how we work with structure. And by structure, I'm going to include time, limits, rules, and authority. When we analyze Saturn in someone's chart, we're also looking at how well they fit within structures, within society. Um, and we're also looking at attitudes towards time based things like tradition and patience. Um, what else? In Saturn, we can also tell how people build containers for themselves, for their lives, for others. And by containers, I mean, here we go back with the structure, the shape, the form, um, the boundaries that they erect. What shape are those? And so when we analyze those shapes, we can see kind of, well, then what are the types of things that people can hold based on the way they build things. So Saturn is very much a builder. Um, what else? We also look to Saturn to see how people handle, and Mandee mentioned this earlier, responsibility, duty, obligation. Again, these are all things, if you think about those words, that they're we're bound to something. It's
Yeah.
like we're not just free to do whatever we want. We have a responsibility and obligation. I'm tied to this. And then when we look at someone's Saturn, we can see, like, you know, how seriously does this person take those things or not? Or there's so much variance. What else? With Saturn, we're also looking at restriction and blockages. So wherever you have Saturn, and I'm thinking like house wise, is a place where you might feel like stopped or blocked from something, like you're not allowed entrance into some space. And also, wherever we have Saturn, there's a depth and like an intense focus or concentration in that area, concentration of energy. And wherever you have Saturn is a place that you have to work hard. You have to work hard at whatever this thing is to get the fruits. And this was also touched upon in Mandee's report when she said, I think you said something like it gives rewards and it
Yeah.
rewards handsomely.
Yeah.
It's like when Saturn does give, which it doesn't want to do very often, but when it does, it's something it's something heavy and big that has like gravitas. It has magnitude. Um, but it the trade-off is it also expects you to work your butt off to get this prize or this reward. Yeah, very very patriarchal in that way, in that yes, I am the one who will grant you all of this if you follow my rules, and if you don't follow my rules there will be punishment. It's very, it's like a cop. it's
Yeah.
um it's yeah, it's the rules, it's the judge handing down that final decision.
Yeah.
um what else? um it's also the place where you have the possibility for mastery, but only after, again, a long time has been put in, after you've matured. Most people don't take full ownership or fully express their Saturn until midlife because it takes time. Um, And what else? Saturn in Capricorn. Yeah, Saturn's at home in Capricorn. And more likely, if you have Saturn in Capricorn, all of the things that I just said, you take those things seriously. Personally, I think there's a mandate, especially if you have Saturn in Capricorn, there's a mandate that you internalize your own personal authority, lest you slavishly follow the rules and traditions of others. So I
Mm.
think with Saturn and Capricorn, not to reduce it to, well, it's one of two ways, but this is kind of the how I see the spectrum, if you will. That's probably not the right word, but I feel like because Saturn in Capricorn is so attuned to like it's friendly with following the rules, coloring inside the lines, doing things the way they've always been done, the tried and true, that if it's very attuned to those things in our culture and in society, these people are going to want to follow, do what the boss says.
Yeah.
And I when I see that in a person's chart, depending on what else is going on, I'm going to usually encourage that that sense of following authority gets kind of turned into the person internalizing the authority that they've been outsourcing, where they can have their own personal integrity calling the shots, where they only really feel like they have to answer to their own personal internalized authority. And here's the thing, a lot of people think they do that,
Yeah.
and they they don't. So it's not just like doing what you feel like whenever. There's still, with Saturn and Capricorn, there's a code of ethics, and you're going to follow your own code of ethics even when you don't want to, because because of integrity and integrity with your own rules instead of the rules of someone else. And then like Mandee, you're in this generation. I
Mhm.
think the most recent like Saturn and Capricorn generation is like in their mid 30s.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I don't know does if any of that resonates.
absolutely. It does. I also, I was born during the Saturn-Uranus conjunction of 88. So there is some of that, but also with this tinge of spontaneity and creativity and going going my own way. I think yeah, what I love the idea of inner authority and your own integrity and kind of going your own way through wherever it's showing up. It's in my fifth house. So I feel very I feel like my creativity, there's a process to it, but it's my own creative process that
Mm.
how I produce and put things out into the world.
Yeah. And because, I know you, um, I've really observed, especially lately, I've seen you really trying to um work with this and like
Yeah.
codify and like,
Yeah.
well, what are my personal rules? What are my codes of conduct, mine, that
Yeah.
I'm, setting for myself? Um, yeah,
Saturn's opposing my ascendant right now, so I'm very much Saturning, doing some work there.
me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, oh, I got all kinds of, yeah, it's opposing my ascendant, it's squaring my natal Saturn, it's squaring my natal Mars. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having to give form to a lot of things right now. Um, okay, yeah, I think that's as thorough as I can.
That was great. Yeah, that was very thorough.
Okay. What?
Next question. In what ways are Capricorn and Cancer similar slash different?
Okay, so that's basically what's going on with this full moon right now. We have a Cancer Capricorn opposition. And also Mandee touched on this as well. I think of, so it's an axis, right? We're talking about a lot of similar themes. We have Capricorn on one end and Cancer on the other. And as an axis, I usually call this the security axis or the parental family axis or the tradition history axis. And those are what they have in common. They're both very interested in safety, security. Is it going to last? Is it going to, be around forever? And lineage, does it answer to the past? Does it answer to the way we've always done it and the things that have proven themselves to work? So they're both very interested in those things. Capricorn in the more material realm and these like material structures and Saturn is a planet of society. It's a planet of groups of people. It's actually a social um, indicator. And yeah, so social structure. And then on the other end, we have Cancer, who's interested in all these same things, but from a very subjective, personal, emotional um, basis. And then we also have, whatever our notion is of the heads of families, the patriarch and matriarch. And so we
Yeah.
have that. They're both, heads of the household, I guess. And but they're responsible for different things. Again, here we have Saturn, Capricorn with the structures and the material security. And with Cancer, we have the emotional security and nurturance, emotional safety. And they're both trying to preserve something. They're both trying to conserve, preserve energy. And and here's where I'm going to go off a little bit. I think they're also very interested in preserving um, their identity. And I know that like identity wanders off into Leo, but
Mm.
in like real life observation, like
Yeah.
with Capricorn, we're thinking like politics. It's like, I am a Democrat, I am a Republican, I am, that's a very identity type of thing. And then in the Cancer realm, it's like, and I've seen this from families a lot. Um, and I don't anyway, I'm not gonna do my judgy thing right now, but it would be like if Mandee, you were like, we are the Sheelers, and Sheelers do things this way, and it's like, that's like so again that
Hmm.
clannishness. And it's same thing with people who are like, you brought up patriotism, you're very patriotic, we are Americans and Americans do things this way. It's just that's where the identity part comes in, and finding the identity in the way you've always done something, or a lineage. um
Mm.
but yeah, I think those are the main differences. But talking about that really makes me want to talk about other
I
things. So let's.
My brain is all sorts of sparkly with thoughts right now, Cory. It one, you mentioned the nostalgic body in the intro, and that's one of the things, like I mentioned a personal story. I'm going through this dental thing. I have a tooth thing going on, which is very Saturnian, but it's brought up this this nostalgic feeling in my body versus how I was cared for in my mom's care growing up. I was a child of divorce versus how I was cared for in my dad's presence growing up. And those were two totally different things. And it was my dad was a little bit more, this is just life, whereas my mom was like, that's life and that's kind of sad. And she gave me space to kind of explore a little bit of how that made me feel in certain moments. And yeah, we could talk about this forever, as we could talk about with everything forever. But
And that's we're gonna end on that note about the nostalgic body. But
yeah,
yeah, when we are ill or sick or some other ways compromised, I find that people go back
yeah,
to when they were children and needed care. So something to think about this Cancer season. Um, wow, and we're out of time. We
oh,
can't even
it's
get to
so
all the
fast.
questions. But thank you so much, Mandee, for joining me today and doing that very thorough work. I hope everyone has a great week, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye bye.